violence is coming from these Obamanoids and these Democratic congressmen that support Obama's agenda. So we've got this hit piece coming up on Wednesday. We got the leaked script last week from a concerned MSNBC staffer. Now, just to understand this, Alex Jones went into this interview. He initially thought he would be interviewed by Chris Matthews, but they sent the production team from MSNBC to interview Alex, and they gave him their word that this would be a balanced and fair biography of the growth of the anti-big government movement. And yet, we received the transcript, we went through it, and it became clear that MSNBC, once again, had resorted to exercising the same tired old cliches about how anyone who criticizes the federal government is basically a dangerous, radical, neo-Nazi racist. They compare them to these obscure radio hosts in the 30s who supported Hitler. So they're smearing us as racists, radicals who probably want to kill people. You had the quote from the Southern Poverty Law Center individual Mark Potak, who said that not Alex Jones, let's be fair, but Alex Jones's listeners want to go on killing sprees. Now, I've been working for Alex for about 8 years, and I've never talked to, received an email, or met an Alex Jones listener who wants to go on a killing spree. Now, you had the Poplawski thing, which was a complete smear. The Pittsburgh cop killer, he actually hated Alex Jones. He left messages on our website, which we found, where he stated that he opposed Alex Jones's peaceful message. Several publications had to retract that, but it's still repeated ad infinitum, even though it's been debunked over and over again. So we're going to get the same kind of rhetoric with this Rise of the New Right hit piece that's coming up on Wednesday, which is unsurprising given the fact that Matthews, and certainly MSNBC as a whole, have made a habit out of portraying Tea Party members, Second Amendment activists, and basically anyone who stands up against big government as part of a new frontier of violent extremism. But for me, and I've been researching this for an article which is going to go up on prisonplanet.com later today, Matthews' agenda-driven bias is exposed fundamentally with no better a comparison than how he, Matthews, Chris Matthews, during an interview with Bill Ayers, the domestic terrorist, the leader of the Weather Underground who bombed government buildings in the 70s, basically acted as an apologist for Ayers' terrorist past, and indeed found common ground with Ayers in other areas of US government policy, both domestic and geopolitical. Now, this is important because, according to former FBI agent Larry Grathwohl, who was assigned to infiltrate the Weather Underground as a double agent, he actually infiltrated their central committee where Bill Ayers was giving out the orders. He discovered that the Weather Underground were bombing the Pentagon, the State Department, and the Capitol Hill building as part of an attempt to cause the collapse of the United States government and open the door for Chinese and Soviet troops and Cuban troops to occupy the country and set up a communist dictatorship. Now, this is admitted by Grathwohl in his testimony, and he states in this clip that we'll play in a second that Bill Ayers, who was the leader of the Weather Underground, stated that Americans who would try to resist this communist takeover would be taken to, quote, re-education centers in the Southwest, and asked what he would do with those Americans who still refuse to convert to this communist revolution. According to Grathwohl, the FBI agent, Bill Ayers said that they would be eliminated, and he went on to say that 25 million Americans who they would take to these concentration camps, these re-education centers, would be killed. And this is a guy that Chris Matthews has defended publicly during an interview and in the aftermath of that interview, as we shall see. And it's a guy who also launched the political career of Barack Obama in his living room. This is Bill Ayers, the domestic terrorist who bombed the Pentagon, who bombed the State Department and the Capitol building in Washington. Now, in this clip, Grathwohl, the FBI agent, also points out that most of the people advocating this brutality, this slaughter of 25 million Americans, had graduate degrees from Columbia, or well-known education centers. And this ties into the fact that after his terrorist past, Ayers went on to become an influential key figure in the development of Barack Obama's political career, and also a key figure in the American educational establishment, as he is now a professor at Illinois University. So let's play this FBI agent, Grathwohl, describing what the goals were of Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground. Let's play the clip.
I brought up the subject of what's going to happen after we take over the government. We become responsible then for administrating, 250 million people. And there was no answers. No one had given any thought to economics. How are you going to clothe and feed these people? The only thing that I could get was that they expected that the Cubans and the North Vietnamese and the Chinese and the Russians would all want to occupy different portions of the United States. They also believed that their immediate responsibility would be to protect against what they called the counter-revolution. And they felt that this counter-revolution could best be guarded against by creating and establishing re-education centers in the Southwest, where we would take all the people who needed to be re-educated into the new way of thinking and teach them how things were going to be. I asked, well, what is going to happen to those people that we can't re-educate, that are die-hard capitalists? And the reply was that they'd have to be eliminated. And when I pursued this further, they estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill 25 million people. I want you to imagine sitting in a room with 25 people, most of which have graduate degrees from Columbia and other well-known educational centers, and hear them figuring out the logistics for the elimination of 25 million people. And they were dead serious.
So that's Larry Grathwohl, former FBI agent, who was tasked to infiltrate Bill Ayers' Weather Underground organization, saying that if the communist revolution was to be successful, that they would allow Soviet and Russian troops to steam in, and any Americans who tried to resist this new tyranny would be taken to, quote, re-education centers, and if they further resisted to convert to the communist revolution, they would be, quote, eliminated. Now, this is coming from a guy, Bill Ayers, who bombed the Pentagon and the State Department and Capitol Hill building, who Chris Matthews threw softball questions at and found common ground with. He's a domestic terrorist, and yet Matthews, in this new hit piece coming up on Wednesday, says that it's the grassroots American people who are the real violent threat. Now, the most disturbing aspect of what you just heard from Grathwohl was not the likelihood that the Weather Underground could have achieved this communist revolution, which was obviously never going to be successful. It's the fact that the man who expressed these intentions to eliminate 25 million Americans who would resist this takeover went on to become an influential elitist within American educational circles, and also came to the aid and directly influenced and launched, indeed, Barack Obama's political career from his own living room. Now, while Matthews savages anti-big government activists as representing this dangerous threat, he portrays Ayers as, this reasonable, progressive and reformed individual. You can go on YouTube and search for Bill Ayers, Chris Matthews, and we're not going to play it because it's a 20-minute interview, but compare that interview of Ayers with the interview, for example, that Chris Matthews conducted with Oathkeeper and Tea Party activist Sheriff Richard Mack, who's never bombed anything and has vehemently shunned violence of any kind. So contrast Matthews' kid-glove treatment of Ayers, the domestic terrorist, with Richard Mack, who is one of the people he's trying to smear as this dangerous radical. The hypocrisy knows no bounds, and we'll continue with this after the break. This is The Alex Jones Show.